Welcome to Just to Know You, the podcast that interviews regular people at SAES and finds out they are far from regular.
That's right. I'm your host, Darian Batten.
And I'm Angela Kerskaden.
Let's get started.
All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on the Just to Know You podcast, where all we do is get to know you. We have with us here Mr. Nadir Youssif. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
What's up? How's it going, Darren?
Man, I can't complain at all. Beforehand, I was telling Kent that, man, this guy is a jack of all trades. He's done grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, future lab. He's a tech guy. He's dipped and dabbed in pretty much everything. And he's a good guy to get to know. And so I'm so happy that you're here. What's your favorite, man?
For teaching wise, I've been enjoying the sixth graders these last couple of years. It seems like every time I go a little older, I appreciate them more. And like anytime I've gone back down, it's like, whoa, like I forgot, like when I went from fifth grade back to fourth grade was, or anything like that. It's always like that. A little, you have to remember where they're coming from. They're just like end of the year third graders, at the beginning of fourth grade or something. But I think the older kids, you can relate to them a little bit better a lot of times, and sometimes just have more fun with them.
Right. Yeah. So is it seventh grade next year, or what are you doing?
I don't know about that. I don't know if the other teachers are willing to give up their spots.
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
Who knows?
I don't know, man. I see you going forth.
Anything's possible.
Well, talking about your journey and your flexibility, how did you get started in teaching?
I mean, before coming here, this is the only international school I've taught at here in Udalia, and then before that, I taught in Plano, Texas, in the Plano School District. It was actually a school on the east side of their district in Richardson, Texas, called Stinson Elementary, and I taught fourth grade and fifth grade there. I think sometime I don't know exactly when I decided I wanted to be a teacher per se, but I remember being a senior in high school and I was helping out in I think it was a kindergarten classroom, just doing something one day, and I was like, I think I could see myself like teaching, something like that. At that time, I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna, like a bunch of my friends, I was gonna go to college and do engineering and all that stuff like a lot of people do, and then got to college and took a couple classes here and there, and then all of a sudden I'm changing my mind and I'm in the School of Education. So but yeah, it was I think one of the things like living I've lived overseas as a kid too, and like seeing just how the lifestyle is for like my parents and like friends of mine whose parents were also teachers, and it's kind of like, oh, this is nice, we get to travel, get to have summers off, and spend time with your family more so than other professions. So probably all of that put together.
You talked about your childhood and living overseas. In what manner did you live overseas, and what was it like?
Well, so my dad is Egyptian and my mom's American from Minnesota. So before I started kindergarten, we lived in Egypt for about a year. So when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I don't know that I don't really consider that part of the international journey, but just because I wasn't in school and I was really little, I don't remember that much about it other than just just being a little kid playing in the street and doing stuff like that. And when we went back to the States and I did kindergarten half of first grade there in Minnesota. Then we moved actually to Riyadh, and I went to school there from finished first grade, did second and third grade at what is now the ACER, the American International School there. Back then they called it SAISR, SAIS Riyadh. But and it was at a different campus back then. This was in the 80s. And then after third grade, we moved back to the States. I went to school in Minneapolis, and like suburb right next to Minneapolis called Golden Valley, where I went from fourth to sixth grade at a elementary school, then seventh and eighth grade junior high, and then my dad got a job to teach at the American University in Cairo. So we moved over there, and I did all of high school at Cairo American College, which is a big international school, probably the biggest one in Cairo, in the Cairo area. And yeah, and I mean, my parents lived there until my mom retired and stuff. And uh, after that, obviously, I went back to the States for college and stuff. So, and here we are now back in Saudi Arabia.
Oh man, that's an amazing back and forth journey from the
Yeah, it was
States to
quite a bit.
Saudi. Yeah, Saudi, and then the States, and then Egypt, and then back to the States, and now Saudi once again. Where have you felt the most at home?
I mean, I always, when people ask where I'm from, I always tell them I'm from Minneapolis or from Minnesota. Um, you know, the being half Egyptian comes into play a lot. Like, mostly, I would say when people hear my name, obviously they're like, "Oh, well, you're obviously not just some guy from Minnesota." Um, but but I, a lot of times, especially when I was younger, my appearance maybe didn't give away that I was half Egyptian. But then, for sure, even as a kid, when people heard my name, it was always like, "Oh, well, where are you from?" or "What? Why is your name that?" kind of thing, And um, so we'd go down that. But I don't know. I think you know, I always say I'm Minnesotan. We're from Minnesota, um, but I always, tend to include that, I'm half Egyptian as well.
Hmm. So as a third culture kid, growing up and having dual identity, what was your biggest struggle?
I think, I mean, kind of like I mentioned like the appearance thing. So like I've told people this before, it's kind of like when I was in the States, I was more like an Egyptian American, like because of my name, because, it didn't matter there to people whether I was, I mean, my dad was Coptic Christian, my mom was Catholic Christian, so we were Christian, and most people associate being Egyptian or Middle Eastern with being Muslim, so it didn't really matter that much that I was in the States, whether I was Muslim or Christian. It was, but oh, because of his name, he's not from here. But then when I would be in Egypt, because I still to this day I don't speak Arabic fluently. I can speak well enough to get by, but not speaking fluently, and having a mom who was white from the States, and not being Muslim, it was more like I was an American there, and so like being I guess an American Egyptian, or I don't know what you'd call it, and so it's kind of that thing where it's like, whether I was here or there, it was, you know on some level I was maybe feeling out of place, or different from the other people, but I mean that's kind of like that's, I mean, we're all different anyways, and it probably made me better in that aspect, just because had to have my own identity, and I don't know.
I wonder if that's you're able to relate to the kids in such a way because being a third culture child yourself, understanding those struggles of them, just trying to fit in, trying to make a name for themselves and all. Because when I walk by your class, it's such a cool vibe. You know what I mean? Like everybody is pretty much in community and kind of laughing, joking, you know, um, kind of entertain each other, but also on task and all that great stuff. That's awesome, man. So how do you, when it comes to identity and things, how do you set that for your family, or um, how do you think the kids explore their identity?
That's, I mean, our kids are still little. I mean, Layla's in fourth grade and Jacob's in second. I mean, he's lucky to be both. Layla had it was in your class a couple years ago, and now you got Jacob. So you've had to deal with him in a school setting. But I think they're not really. They're at an age where maybe Layla's starting to think more about that kind of stuff, and we talk about, like, we tease Jacob just because, like, he was born here, and so, oh yeah, you're Saudi, like, and and sometimes he believes it. He's like, oh well, then where, but he knows he's American, and like, and because Layla was born in Texas, and and it's kind of like, oh well, Layla's more like her mom because they were both born in Texas. Jacob's more like me because I mean, I don't know. I wasn't born. I was born in Minneapolis, so I don't. But I think that's something definitely as they get older, and um, those kind of things come up with you know with their last name. Even because my wife, she gets, especially being here, a lot because she doesn't look Arab, and or doesn't dress that way in any way, and she's had many Saudi women asking like wondering like why is her name Yusuf,
Right.
and things like that. And so I think the kids will probably as they get a little bit older, especially if they're not here, being here, I think it makes it more commonplace. There's a
Right.
lot because we have a lot of kids who are from mixed cultures, or a lot of kids who are obviously Arab being in this part of the world. But when they end up going back to the States at some point, they'll probably have to deal with it more as like, what Yusuf, what kind of name is that? And things like that. But I don't know. Hopefully we teach them and bring them up in a way where they're going to be comfortable with it and proud and just be them.
Let's dig a little deeper.
All right.
Yeah. uh, just speaking of that, of how you have kind of developed yourself and laying the path. Who is one like historical figure that you identify with, and that you can kind of see setting the foundation for someone as yourself to follow, so to speak?
I mean, I don't know. So much of what, like, growing up and the things I'm interested in now and as a kid, were more sports related and, just being more into those kind of things. And I think most of the stuff that I've learned or come to be is probably just more from my family as opposed to like any historical or famous person, like that to say that.
It could be a sports, could be a an artist, could be
I mean,
family.
so one of my favorite players as a kid was Charles Barkley. And it seems like as he, in present day, like when he's on Inside NBA on TNT, he's definitely become known for saying outlandish things and speaking his mind and things like that. And but I mean, I remember just the way that he played when I as a kid, and that's kind of like the playing tough and playing hard and hustling and all that stuff were the things that I liked. And I remember there was the he had a couple sayings or commercials, like about how he wasn't a role, I'm not a role model,
Right.
and it wasn't, that's not like so to say that I liked him as a player. It's not like I didn't look up to him as a as a model, like as a person necessarily, because I don't know him as a person. Like
Right.
I looked up to him because of the way he played and the as a player. And so I think I appreciated though that message, whereas like because in interviews and stuff he's talking about. I mean, I even remember I had a T-shirt, from when he was on the Sixers that said like, "Oh, I'm not a role model,"
Right.
and like he talked about how like parents and teachers and people like that are the ones that we're supposed to have our kids looking up to and raising the kids, not professional athletes. And then I don't know, something related to that, even like because I like I love golfing, like both playing and watching it, and how I've always been a big Tiger Woods fan. And even like when he got into all his trouble with his with his family and all that stuff came out about him, you know I remember having conversations with people being like, oh, I don't like Tiger anymore, because of what it's like. I still want to watch him golf, like I don't I didn't like him in the beginning because he was a good husband or a good father. I don't know what kind of person you are. It's and so those are the things. I guess there are those people throughout history, who probably were fantastic role models and did great things for society and civil rights and things like that. But it was more like I don't know that I ever. That's a little lofty for like what I'm at. Like I can't put myself on that kind of level.
I can see though you emulating Charles Barkley in the way that you are kind of straight no chaser, and the way that you deliver facts, opinions, pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean we talked about that. Like, what you see is what you get. I'm not gonna act one way with in this situation and another somewhere else, or that's I don't know. You should be who you are.
I'm not mad at that. Not mad at that at all. I also know that you're an avid, from what I've seen, avid um, golf player. Like I went and saw your shoe collection for golf shoes, golf
Yeah,
shoes.
yeah, yeah.
And how did you get started playing golf, and what fed your love for it?
Probably the very first thing that got me into golf, like when I was a kid, there was the Golden Valley Country Club was in the city where I lived, and when I grew up, when I lived in the States, and as a kid wanting to just earn money, to buy video games and whatever, and baseball, basketball cards, in the summer I became a caddy.
Huh.
And so for 2-3 summers, I think I caddied at this country club, and my mom had signed me and my brother up for, the community whatever, the park and rec golf lessons, or golf for kids, where we'd go over to the little par 3 9-hole course, and, you know, and just, and play, and, kind of never got lessons that I really remember, but just, we, got us some cheap clubs, and
Hmm.
we started playing a little bit. And so I played a little bit as a kid, and then, as we got older, it's expensive. So like when I was in college and stuff, I wasn't really playing golf ever. And then a few years before moving here, actually, maybe 5 years before we moved here, I picked it up again, and, like, got a new set of clubs and just started playing with one of my friends. Not every week, but, at least once a month or something like that, twice a month. And I've been, just been playing more and more since. And now I play every weekend, and don't practice enough, but I go out and play anyway.
All right, as a golfer, your top three courses all time. Top three courses you played on,
That I've played.
that you've played, and why?
So number one, whew, I don't know. How about in no order? The top three I would probably say are Dumbarnie,
Who?
Dumbarnie Links in Scotland. It's it's a newer course, but it's really nice. I don't know. I played it a couple of years ago. Just a links course, like right on the water, and super difficult. Just makes you realize how bad you really are. And then, I mean, I could say the other ones there, but I'll switch it around. I played a course in Jack Nicklaus course in Florida called Old Corkscrew, and it was like just really well, like very well maintained, and like just lots of like variety, and it was going like in and out of, like, it seemed like I don't know, the Florida jungle. I don't even know if that's a thing, but it was like you were in the jungle, because there's animals everywhere, and like lizards, and you're hearing all these noises. And um but just the course was really, really nice. um and then, man, one more. I mean, since coming over here, I've gotten to play a lot of really, like, fantastic courses. I guess maybe in Oman, there's a course called El Mouj, which is right on the water, and it's a really nice Greg Norman course. And I remember it was uh, just being really impressed by it. And it's when you're not hitting good shots, every course is hard. Like, and it's kind of like, so for me to say, oh, this course is way more difficult than another, but those are three. But so many of them stick out, like, that that I could would love to go back and play, or even ones that I've played more than once, that I could always go back and play again. Um, I mean, there's ones in Dubai, and like, Yas Links in Abu Dhabi, and I don't know, Whistling Straits and Wisconsin. I could go on and on.
It's interesting because as someone who hasn't dabbled in golf very much. I've never heard golf courses described from um, just a picturesque perspective. Like for you, it sounds like it's the scenery, it's the trees, it's the environment, and golf is a way in order for you to navigate that environment and take it in.
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing about it that I I mean the challenge of the game itself is one thing. That's never going to change. I think no matter how good you get at it, you can never beat it. You can always do better, that's probably what part of the reason why it's so frustrating. But like the one thing that like to seek out these different courses and like to see them and just be outside and there's been times when the weather's been fantastic and had a wonderful time, and then there's times when it's like we're freezing, the rain's coming sideways, and it's like we don't always go in, you keep going and like and so it's there's I don't know, it's that part of it, part of that being out in nature. And that's one of the like I talk to people about like being down here in Odalia, and like because for most of the time we've been here, I used to play our course down here every weekend. And just then a couple of years ago, I started playing up in Dahran, and now I go there every morning or every Friday morning or whatever on the weekends. And part of it is that reason because we're still in Saudi Arabia, still not a lot to look at outside of the course, but it's part of that being on the grass and not being just on the sand and things like that that make it more, you know, for me. But I enjoy it more that way.
Bringing us full circle, you were talking about um, how it's different being here in Saudi Arabia. How did you get from Texas to Saudi Arabia in your teaching journey?
When I went, finally decided in college that yeah, I'm going to be a teacher. My 100% I was planning on like yeah, I'm going to go teach overseas. Like it was like I'm going to go. I mean, I went to the University of Minnesota, and the plan was that I was going to, after I finished there, I was going to teach 2 years and go overseas because that was like, the thing, like, you got to have 2 years of experience in order to get in anywhere decent. And I ended up moving down to Texas to teach. Just it worked out. Like I had a couple of my friends from high school lived in that area, and then when I student taught in the Minneapolis area, the woman that I student taught with in her fifth grade class, like her husband, who was also a teacher, had a student who was a principal down in Texas. So, I went to a job fair, met this guy. He was a high school principal. So he was just like, oh, get me your resume. So, one thing, it was that easy, and it like couldn't have been any easier. I forwarded my resume, and then I had like interviews set up down in that school district. And so got down there, ended up meeting Jen, my wife, at that first school, that school I taught at, Stinson Elementary. And so after being there for a little while and dating and everything, and then we got married. And so my friends from high school are still living in the area, and they're still there now. And like, so years are years start going by a little bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be going over. And my friends are like, you're not going anywhere. Jen's not gonna let you leave.
Hey,
She,
so can I ask you a question?
yeah.
What made it like? It seemed like you were. It just worked out. You were just like by Minnesota. Like you just were like,
Oh, I mean, after going to college, like as a kid, living in Minnesota is great. It's snow in the winter. It's the weather. You don't mind it, but then as like going to when I was there for in college, and you're there during the winter, it's like, and so like basically November through March, it's winter. And it's not like winter for like people you don't know. Like the kids here, they don't understand what winter is. And it's like. And after, like, I just remember, going to some of my classes when I was in college, and, sometimes I'd had night classes. It's, February, and I'm coming home, walking through campus at 9:30 at night. And I'm just, and it's the actual temperature is 20 below, and it's 30 mile per hour wind. And I'm thinking, what am I, what's wrong with these? Like, And so I just decided, I was like, when, I'm leaving after, I'm not going to stay here, and so that's how, like, and, I remember going down to visit those high school friends in Dallas one spring when, like, the Timberwolves were playing the Mavericks in the playoffs. So I went down for a couple of the games, and like a couple of their parents lived in that area, in the Plano area. And I was like, this is pretty nice. I could see myself teaching here or living in this area. And it just happened to work out where the woman who I student taught with, her husband's former student was a principal in in the Plano school district. So whatever is, and so that's how that happened. But then, I kept telling my friends that I was going to leave, and like I was saying, they're like, she's not going to let you go anywhere. You're stuck here. And so whatever. Then eventually, I'm trying to, like, I think I taught there 9 years before we moved here, and so it's probably like around the 7th or 8th year when we were talking about just like, okay, well, what are we doing? What, Jen was like, okay, well, let's look into it. And um, one of my friends one of those high school friends who lives down in Dallas, his mom and dad were teachers, and like she had become an assistant superintendent and all this in other schools. And so I reached out to her and just was like, asked her about what she thought and where it would be good. And she actually said, oh, you should look into teaching for Saudi Aramco. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, I'm going to bring Jen to Saudi Arabia. That was, and I completely dismissed it. It was like, that's not even on the, I had a list of countries and schools that looked appealing, and like, it wasn't on there. And so we filled out the search associate stuff though. And then I think we got an email from Lisa Samoji just, talking about, oh, we're interested in, as hiring you as a couple. And that was pretty much it.
Shout out to Lisa Samoji for holding it down all these years.
Yeah, she's gotten everybody in here, I think, right?
That's amazing. And you just jumped in with 2 feet, and it's been smooth sailing ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we finally were like, yeah, let's do it. It was, I mean, I don't know what the exact conversation between Jen and I was, but there was probably my intentions of how long we were going to stay was probably initially longer than what she was maybe contemplating. But I mean, both of us love being here, and I don't know, I still don't consider it my home in it by any means, but it's kind of become that, like,
Yeah.
because this is what our kids know, and we've been here for a while now, and it's definitely, we love our jobs, and it's comfortable being here.
If people don't know, Saudi Aramco has 4 campuses. Dahran would be considered like the Great Dane, and then you have you have Ras Tanor, which is like a lab, and then you got Abcake. Abcake, it's getting a little smaller. That's more like a chow chow, and then you got Udalia. Udalia is more like a large chihuahua. Just the size comparisons. So y'all have been in Udalia for the duration of your time here. How have you made a place it's full of love, full of heart, but can sometimes be a struggle as far as um, with having such a small confined to a small place? How have you all made it home? And I mean, have just been jovial backbones of the community. How have y'all done it?
I mean, I think, when we came here when our daughter was 1.5, and not that we were, before we had Layla, we were out at the clubs every night or anything like that. But, we were at a point in our lives where it's like, we have a 1.5-year-old. We're not going out all the time anyway.
Right.
We didn't, um, what, so that, and even, I mean, just thinking of the years that we've been here, things have changed so much. Like now a lot of it, you can go to Hafoof, no problem,
Mhm.
and go out to eat and do whatever. And it's, there's options, but like, even, in the years we've been here, I think this is our 9th year. Like, there wasn't much in Hafoof when we got here, and,
Right.
but that didn't really bother us that much. Cause it was like, we're happy being at home, and, I'm happy to cook, and, I cook it, pretty much most nights of the week. And then it's just because of the small community and the way that people are here, it's very, I don't know, great for like young kids. It kind of reminds me back, like if when I was a kid in the States, the neighborhood we lived in was kind of, even though we were like 10 minutes from downtown Minneapolis, it was like the little neighborhood that my parents' house was in was like just a couple side streets off and like kind of secluded from any busy roads. And it was like we had our own, like we could just roam and do whatever. And that's kind of how it is here. Like the kids kind of do whatever they want, and it's safe, and we don't really, as parents, don't have to worry about them getting into too much trouble. And obviously there's not as many kids and stuff like that as up in Dahran and things like that, but for the most part, the ones who are here and the other teachers and the people who live here are good, neighbors and community members and coworkers and good friends. So and that's why we're still here, I guess, after 9 years going strong.
Well, I'm curious to know what other countries were on that list that Saudi did not make.
Oh man, like lots of, I mean, I think the list was at least 20 play. Like I probably had a handful in Europe, a number in Southeast Asia. I think like, the Emirates, Abu Dhabi and Dubai were possibilities. I don't know, just the part of it was because, my wife hadn't traveled a lot. I just kind of thought, that, this isn't the place where most people would look at as being their ideal destination. I know they're trying to make it that destination location now for tourism, but living here is great, but I don't know. I don't expect to get a tourist visa after I leave.
What are some things, one or two things that you've learned from being specifically in Saudi Arabia or in overseas in general that you don't feel like you would have had if you've stayed in good old Minnesota or Texas?
I don't know. So like you see people from all over, getting to meet, not just other Americans, but people from other countries. And we get to, there's this, especially here, like you were saying, the community is small enough, like where, we do interact with like other people who aren't teachers or, who have different jobs within Aramco. And so I think it's just given the opportunity to be around a lot of different people and experience a lot of different things that definitely wouldn't have back home.
One thing that I would say that you do take from home, though, is your fashion sense. People people would know that if they saw this shirt that you got on. That is real flashy. I'm telling you, it's flashy.
Well, it's not that flashy,
bro. It's flashy. You got the second button unbuttoned. I see chest hair. It's
Get
flashy.
outta here.
So, but you do have also a very extensive shoe collection. Like it is insane. Where did you get? And when I say insane, I mean there are over hundreds of shoes.
I don't know if the hundreds plural. Over 100.
Over 100.
maybe.
My apology. My southern draw. My apology. But there's over 100 at least, and you have shoe rooms in multiple countries. How did you start?
In multiple countries.
In multiple countries, man. Internationally known, locally respected. But how did you start your shoe collection, and what significance is it for you?
I mean, I don't know. I've just always like, I mean, I remember as a kid, wanting those Jordans for $125, and my mom being like, "Hell no." I mean, she never said it that way, but it was just a firm no. And and I think as we got a little older, like I remember in specifically like maybe starting like 6th grade or 5th grade, like for playing basketball, like I would get my parents would buy us like our basketball shoes for the season, and like I remember we'll pay this much, anything over that you got to use your own money, and and so and I never, I mean, back then I didn't buy those Jordans because I wasn't going to use, I think what she was going to pay like maybe at max $50. So I wasn't ready to spend 75 of my own on those Jordans, but I would get ones, up around 100. But then it was like I wasn't allowed to wear them. I brought them to basketball and especially living in Minnesota as a kid, like you ruin the shoes if you wear them outside during basketball season because it's November to whatever, it's the winter time.
Right.
And so I remember, I wasn't allowed to wear them outside of basketball practice or games until after the season was over. And I don't know if that just made me like, just more excited for them or like, oh, I can't wait, or which pair am I going to get this season or what it was. But just, I don't know. And like, I mentioned, like Charles Bark, like I've seen all the commercials, like, the David Robinson pumps, and I'm a Nike person. Like pretty much all my athletic shoes are Nikes. So I'm biased towards that. But as I got older and, stopped growing out of my shoes, then it was like, oh, then, I just like to wear different ones. And I don't know, just started like I wear all my shoes too. I don't keep them like you're making it sound like I have this grand collection that's for just display, but they're for use. Like, and that's the thing. Like I try not to wear. There's sometimes when I really like a pair, I'll wear them a couple times, like maybe twice in a week or once a week for a little while. But I try to cycle through them all and. I don't know, have a few pair of those Jordans that I never got when I was a kid now that there's a couple pairs that I've never worn that like were the two Jordans that I wish I could have had when I was a kid. And it's not like they're that special to me. It's just, I worry that if I wear them out one time, I'll get them dirty. So it's that's more like why I keep those ones special. But then the same thing you mentioned earlier, like I have a bunch, like way too many golf shoes as well.
Yeah.
But those are fun to get to.
I guess when you play like you play, man, you reward yourself.
Yeah, I have to have. I mean, you have to coordinate, right? The shoes got to match the outfit.
Got to match the fit. Yeah. Well, Mr. Youssif, it's been my pleasure. I have one more question for you,
Okay.
and then we're gonna phase on out. Okay. So, as your son and your daughter are growing up, they are obviously third culture kids. They all obviously have dual identity, and so for them, your legacy saying, what would you tell them about growing up as third culture kids as they come to know who they are?
I think probably all of us through our lives, I don't know. I remember having the conversation with my parents. Like, it wasn't until blah 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 whatever age that I realized, like, you guys are probably right about a lot of things. Like maybe I should have listened a little more, but just to appreciate a lot of the things that I think our kids are way more spoiled than me and my brother were. Not that we had it rough in any way.
Mm-hmm.
We were like fortunate, like our parents, that's, one of the things, my parents did a great job of providing for us and making sure we were always comfortable and had what we needed and usually what we wanted. But like our kids are way more spoiled than we were. But like, just so that they appreciate the things, like like getting to go to different, traveling where a lot of the kids back, like when we were growing up, like they don't leave your hometown or or get to go on vacations and we get to do that. Hopefully it's something that we teach them that even though we love our jobs and sometimes you still have to work, to get to a point where it's like, oh, you can also enjoy and do those things. And because I don't know, there's one of the more recent Chris Rock stand-ups. He's telling a story about one of his daughters when she was like in kindergarten and like something about like, oh, the teacher said, we're going to learn about the four seasons in class. And his daughter said, oh, that's my favorite hotel or whatever. And, and that's one of the things I worry about with like, for my kids, like, I don't want them thinking everything's just like, oh, nice vacations in Bahrain and going out to eat and doing, and buying all this stuff. It's like, you gotta, because I don't know, like even Jacob a couple weeks ago was asking about like, how much money does he need to make in order to buy a house? He was talking about here inside, like, my first was, why do you want to buy a house in Saudi Arabia? But how much money so that he can, and he even said, so he can stay at home and play video games all day. I'm thinking, what? Man, this guy doesn't get it yet. So I don't know. Just hopefully they appreciate those things that, like, that I've, even as, I'm sure when I was their age, I had similar thinking and stuff, and but have come to recognize, like, oh yeah, if it wasn't for the hard work that our parents did and stuff like that, we wouldn't have been able to appreciate a lot of the or experience a lot of things, I should say. And now looking back, be like, oh wow, we were lucky, Yeah. So hopefully they come to that realization and can do the same thing for their kids and just keep it going.
I can't wait to see you as a grandpappy. as they continue to pass this legacy on from generation to generation. So, Mr. Nadir Youssif, thank you so much for allowing us to have this time with you, and understand that at this specific moment, the most important thing that we could do is just take the time to get to know you. So thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Darian. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Just to Know You.
We would like to thank our amazing tech man, Mr. Kent Arimura, Sterling McDonald for the podcast music, and the SAES community. See you next time.
If you know anyone who you think has a great story to tell, we would love to hear about it. Please send an email to either Angela, Darian, or Kent.